Is this thing on? Are we live? God, this camera is horrible. It looks like I'm filming in a bunker somewhere. What's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. We'll let a few folks get on and then we can start talking about that interview. It's about an hour-long interview on Autoline TV that Tim Kaniskis was basically chatting with some automotive journalists about what to expect at SEMA, some of the backlash with the EV announcements. And actually, it's a really good, rather candid discussion that he's having. Some of you guys may have seen it. Some of you may not. Again, it is Autoline TV. Check it out. Go to their September archives. I want to say this aired Tuesday, give or take. So not really any kind of spoiler alert here. One of the things that was being discussed, Tez is saying he saw it. It was great. So you know where I'm going with this. One of the things that was discussed was what's to be announced at SEMA, and basically alluded to the fact that whatever is going to be released at SEMA is going to be EV based. Also hinted as to what the direct connection tie-in will be. In essence, you can buy more and more battery power to ramp up your STLA large platform, which we've all known about now for what seems like forever. Now, aside from that, quite a bit of other things were discussed, not the least of which is, well, definitely not looking to expand or I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Any new developments for an internal combustion engine, at least for this platform, have been squashed. So continuations, don't look for it. And to that point, no more refinements to that internal combustion engine platform. Now, that's not to say that the guy's not leaving something on the table or under the table or holding his cards to the chest. The point that I'm making here is that it's very possible that there could be something lying in wait that we might get sprung on us. But if you're holding out for a new platform with the Hurricane Inline 6, although that would be a fantastic thing to see, 500 horsepower inline 6 twin turbo versus 500 horsepower naturally aspirated Coyote. If they weighed about the same, how cool would that be? Couple of good old domestic pony cars going at it once again. Yeah, don't bet the farm on that, fellas, because I just don't see it happening. I don't see it going that way. And so based on the body language that I was seeing in that interview and based on what I was seeing, it doesn't look like there's going to be much else to get ready for at SEMA. Basically, you're looking at more EV news, more of the direct connection tie-in, and, well, that's pretty much it. The brand that Tim Kaniskis was talking about, in this case, Dodge, going away was a real possibility. Think of it like this. If the EV program didn't work, or if the EV program wasn't greenlit, the branding of Dodge was going to get 86 off of Stellantis's menu of brands. Now, when you think about that for a minute, that's pretty crazy. It almost seems like it's just preposterous to believe that Stellantis would axe Dodge as a brand. But the fact of the matter is that if it weren't for the recent success of the Challengers and Chargers, Dodge really wouldn't have a leg to stand on. The Journey, if you even remember what that thing is or was, doesn't really do the brand a whole lot of good. The Dart was a bit of a flop, although I don't think it was brought to market the right way, which leaves you with, well, the Challenger and the Charger and all the variants that come with it. Well, the thing about it is that doesn't really carry a world platform. It's just not. It's not something you can cross-pollinate all over the planet, and that's kind of what Stellantis is looking for. So, because of that, and because of the simple fact that well, Stellantis primarily bought FCA and the brands of Dodge primarily for Jeep and for Ram. It kind of left Dodge as the odd man out, oddly enough, that it is the heart and soul of all things Mopar, at least from a branding and marketing standpoint. I mean, Jeep's got its own thing and so does Ram, but let's be honest, you see a lot more commercials for the lit up tires and the blower winds than you do for anything else. At least I've noticed that over the last few years, at least. So what I'm looking at in terms of what to expect out of SEMA, what I'm looking for is a little bit more of the doubling down on the EV platform. And with Dodge basically saying, look, we're not only going to support the EV, but we are going to make it as Dodgy as we can. Coin that phrase, double entendre there. They're going to make it as Dodge-esque as they possibly can. Are you in on some of these gimmicky tricks that they're going to throw at this car? See, the problem is that Tim Kuniskis is really leaning on this two-speed transmission thing. This is not unfamiliar territory, though. This is something, what just flew at my face? Damn it. Perform. So this is something that, well, basically Porsche and Audi did with the e-tron and with the whatever that forgettable electric sports car they came out with. It was a very, how do you put this? Very good effort, but not very well conceived way to get the EV to go faster, which is basically throw a transmission at it. It's a good idea in concept, but has weight and complexity to the general platform itself. Taycan. And when the Taycan had that two-speed working for it, it basically allowed that car to mile an hour. In other words, to carry the same mile an hour in the quarter mile, utilizing older motor technology as an internal combustion engine would. Well, with the newest, latest motor technology, you really don't need all of that. And although in the trucks, it would be really a smart play because, again, it might give you some towing capacity or at least range to go along with the capacity that it has to tow. For the car, I'm not so sure it makes a whole lot of sense, especially in something that's all-wheel drive. But again, doubling down on the two-speed automatic transmission gimmick, which is a little bit concerning. I mean, I'm hoping they don't go soft on the motors and just try to rely on the transmission to secondarily load them on that 1-2 shift to get the performance out of it. The other thing that I found curious was the explanation of that exhaust sound. It's actually speakers channeling sound through pipes. He mentioned a pipe organ in this, and I got to thinking about that. I was like, man, this thing is overly complicated and it's trying really hard. And it just seems, is cringy the right way to put it? I'm not sure that I would say that it's the best laid out plan in all of this. I mean, in looking at how this is all being brought to market, it's looking a little bit desperate, especially in light of the fact that Camaro's big replacement is going to be a 4-door EV sedan. Who knows what that thing's going to be producing? And with Cadillac going all EV, well, you can pretty much bet that those things are going to be extremely powerful. Think of think of a Hummer EV, just smaller, that kind of power in something that might be a sedan or an SUV. Not a small thing to think about or consider when you've got cars that are basically making 700, 800, 900 horsepower regularly now on the EV. And if they're not making them now, they're being talked about. They're being put out for EOs. In other words, executive orders for safety compliance, things like that. So Dodge is going to have to do something amazing. The problem is that we've known about the STLA Large for quite some time. And it's funny because Tim Kuniskis even said, and he joked saying, well, I've had this concept car that apparently I'm late in releasing or announcing. Here's the funny thing. My retort to that, everybody kind of had a little bit of, you could tell if you watch the video, the response is kind of this uneasy laugh from the panel. My response would have been really clear and to the point. Hey, Tim, listen, buddy. Yeah, we've known about the STLA large platform for way too long for us to be waiting this long for an EV release. In fact, everybody else has made it to the party. Dodge hasn't yet. And while you're playing around with these little gimmicky noise generators and pipe organ-esque routing for the sound, everybody else is making or showing or releasing some kind of an EV hot rod. Now, that's not to say that those vehicles are doing all that great. If the Lightning pickup truck has taught us anything, it's that you can get something incredibly right and also screw it up royally in the process. And that would be the Lightning truck. There have been several, the internet is packed full of folks that have tried to tow anything with that truck, only to find that their range is about a third of what's advertised. And I happen to know a guy that bought one only to immediately get rid of it because, well, the range was terrible. So they're fast, but they're not really living up to the promise that they were, I guess, being marketed with and sent out into the world. So in essence, what Dodge has done is they have agreed that the internal combustion engine is no more in their menu list of inventories. And they will be going with, at least for high performance options, I should say, an all EV platform. But again, look at where Maserati is going. Look at where Cadillac is going. Look at where Chevrolet is going. They're just following the winds. And in that interview, it has to be said that, Mr. Kuniskis acknowledged the fact that Dodge had taken a rather significant hit in buyer or fan confidence, depending on how you want to look at it, when it comes to the Dodge brand itself. They have not yet recovered from that. Also, what was interesting in that video, remember when Tim was talking about we have the youngest demographic. What's funny is that he clarified that in this video. And again, it's a very candid chat. And I've got a lot of, I've got more respect for the guy since he's done this interview, because in him being candid, it kind of shed a little bit of light on some things. But it was funny. This is one of the parts where he was candid. He said, yeah, we've got the youngest buying demographic at 52 years old. All right. So it's funny to talk about Gen X and Gen Y and Gen whatever and be talking about all these folks. Millennials was like the buzzword for him, though. But yeah, 52 years old is them being the youngest age demographic. But he was quick to mention that, but you have to remember, though, that in this game that I'm playing or that he's playing, that the next 7 age demographics may only extend to 56 or 58 years of age in terms of a mean buying age. All of that is to say this. There is a push for Dodge to mortgage their future heavily on folks that were born between 1980 and 1995. And there's a lot of talk about the early adoption of that. I'm going to tell you where I feel like this is a major false economy on the part of Dodge. First of all, you're planning on these people born at that time to, in roughly 7 years, which isn't that long from now, to be buying cars, new cars, but they're banking on infrastructure. They're banking on the fact that these folks will own houses. The 20-something, the 23-year-old of today, you're banking on the 30-year-old version of that person being in a place where they can afford an EV that you're planning on making. the 27-year-old that you're planning on that 35, 38-year-old version of that person. And you can see how this list goes up. Where I'm going with this is if you're living in a place that doesn't have a garage, you don't really fall in line with what makes an EV owner a viable candidate, a viable prospect. If you don't have a house, and if that place that you're living or that place that you work rather doesn't offer EV charging, that's a secondary inconvenience for you. So again, he made mention of the fact that he understands that yes, 30% of the cars sold in 2030 are going to be gasoline. But you're banking the brand of Dodge on 100% of sales being EV, except for stuff like the Hornet. And okay, fine. The Hornet's in there. Okay, I get it. It's got to be part of the whole product mix. But the big performance stuff is going to come in the form of EVs. And again, in talking with the rest of the panel, one of the things that I noticed that was pretty interesting was the fact that he, when he was talking about what he knew the brand meant to people, or the gist that you got was that he knew what the brand meant to people. He knows what kind of hit that they've taken, but that his hands are completely tied. In other words, this was not a Dodge decision. This is a decision that came down from way above, and they've got nothing to do but to follow orders in this. So that leads me to the assumption that, moving forward, at least past 2030, we're going to see a bunch of direct connection influence with this EV. How much battery you can buy, how much software you can buy. He mentioned that the cars will have a different sound based on the level that you purchase. So that's kind of a cool thing. If you're into that sort of thing, but no real mention of features and certainly no mention of power, which is something that is kind of interesting to me. Here it is. It is September of 2022. The car is supposed to be a 2024 release, which is to say that you're already in 2023 model year. If you're already in 2023 model year, shouldn't you be hyping this new contraption up a little bit, since you're only, a model year away from selling this thing? Listen, you're only honestly 12 months away from people trying to order this thing. So it's kind of weird, kind of strange that there's so much cloak and dagger stuff. Kaniska is saying that he was getting... And it was really weird that he says that he was getting flack for being so late in bringing that EV to show. Well, bro, it's a 2024 model car and you're showing us a concept car. Concept cars traditionally come out 2 to 3 years before the real thing. We're 1 year away. Like it's 1 year away. In one full year, it'll be September of 2023, coming into, or I should say, out of the third quarter of the year, coming into the last quarter of the year, and people are going to want to start buying this thing. Are you going to tell us then that the car's been pushed back? That all of this was for nothing? You got to at least show us something, right? Anyway, kind of a bizarre thing, especially on the timing and just some of the comments that were made during the course of that interview. So I'm banking on keeping everything that I have internal combustion for as long as I can. See, part of the issue that I have with Dodge going 100% EV is basically the fact that, to me, it takes the enthusiast out of the equation. Part of what Tim Kaniskis was saying in that interview was he understands that half of the cars that they sell get modified in some way, shape, or form. Could be rims, suspension, tuning, this, that, and everything else, which my head exploded because I'm going, yeah, this is the company that'll void your warranty if you put drag radials on a car that they tout as being a drag race car. What? Anyway, they'll find every reason under the sun to void your warranty, but they know for a fact that half the people are modifying these cars. And want you to go only through direct connection for those modifications for the EVs and whatever other contraptions are going to be coming from Dodge or from Ram or from wherever. I guess the point here is that from what I could see and from what I was understanding from all of this is that Dodge is trying to do whatever they can to keep the brand alive. This is the brand being put on life support, plugged in, pun intended, and they're trying to keep this thing at least relevant on some level. And again, with Chevrolet replacing the Camaro with a 4-door EV to be described, I guess, later, and that Camaro exiting in 2024, the Challenger and Charger exiting in 2024, I'm only left to assume that, well, Dodge's last hurrah could be over sooner than you think. Because once SEMA is come and gone, we won't have anything to talk about. The die will be cast, as they say. And moving forward, all we can really talk about is what cylinder heads and what cam to put in your Gen 3 Hemi powered by whatever it is, Mopar cam. Is it going to be a one of the comp cams? I mean, what are we going to talk about? Because we're not going to have anything to look forward to unless you're really into the EVs. And the problem with that is that really into EVs guy is going to be going to direct connection because they will be the only game in town, at least for some amount of time, that will have access to the operating systems to make the EVs actually work and to have the upgraded kits. Now, we don't know what those kits look like yet. OC, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that contribution to the cause, my friend. Saying, interestingly, Tim never said that EV was going to be a 2024 unless I missed something. Yeah, it was actually, there was some, what was it? At the actual releases, they were talking about it being a 2024 model year car. Thing is likely 2 to 3 years away at best. My humble opinion, they got nothing good for us in 2024. No, well, the 2024, let me rephrase that. The 2024 is the last year for the internal combustion engine for Dodge, for these LX platforms, LC, LX, they're all basically the Dodge platform. It has been understood that the EV was going to be a 2024 model year for quite a while. And as a matter of fact, it's been put out in press quite a bit, unless that's been recanted or something's been pushed back. But this isn't the first time that we've had Dodge say something or insinuate something and then reel it back. Remember that it was 2018 that was supposed to be the absolute last year for the LX platform. And remember that that's why we had the Demon that was getting released at that point. More to the point, we also had rumors of the Julia platform being the next platform that the Challenger Charger was going to be built on, only to be moved into the Ghibli. Well, when Brampton had their labor dispute or labor agreement, however you want to look at it, that rolling blackout of when is going to be the last Challenger or Charger built started basically to go from 2018, then it was 2020, then it was 2021 or 2 at some point. And I guess the point is, I'm not surprised. If they do end up moving it back or kicking it further back, just as good. But everything that I had read leading up to this was pushing for a 2024 model year for the EV. And even more to that point, it was, we are giving the internal combustion engine the axe. There is not going to be an internal combustion engine, but so many people wanted to throw out there that, well, maybe there will be, maybe there's a new platform. The next car is going to be an inline six twin turbo. It's a lot of hope, but I got to tell you, unless this was kind of a smoke and mirrors thing by Tim Kuniskis in that interview, unless I picked up on something or didn't understand something properly, what is going to be announced at SEMA is just going to be more of the EV. Whether it's a direct connection, whether it's a new different type of a platform, a different look, or what have you. Now, that's not to say that that's what I want to see. I would love to see an inline six twin turbo 500 horsepower, the high output variant of that Hurricane going up against the Coyote, but in a lightweight platform to boot. I mean, that would be fantastic. I just don't see it happening yet. And that's a real bummer. But one of the other things, and let me ask you guys, one of the, I think Eric just popped up, saying as a certified automotive technician, we have the technology right now to invest in alternative fuels rather than just electric. So let me ask you this, Eric. Would you want to get certified as an EV tech? And the only reason why I asked that question is if I were a mechanic and I had to work on EVs, that would be one of the most frightening things I could ever imagine working on, because, I mean, you guys have heard me say it before. I mean, you drop a wrench on a battery and it gets exciting for about half a second and then everybody has a laugh. You drop a wrench on an EV battery and the thing turns into a spotlight. So, I'm just curious as far as, what, if anybody is, interested in being an EV tech, what are some of the concerns that you have? I mean, I know it's kind of an odd question, but, I can think of hazard pay being part of that. I mean, it's just scary to think of the battery, the voltage, the wattage, the amperage, and everything else that that would be involved in all of that. So anyway, just stuff that crosses your mind. But let me catch up with you guys really quick. But again, OC, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sam is in saying, yo, Ardell's in. What's up with the EV? Yeah, that's a good question. What is up with that thing? Sam's asking, prep for the Hurricane. Have you ever heard of power steering pump only putting out half the pressure? Never have. No, they're either putting out pressure normally or they're not. Arfa's saying more EV at SEMA. I need something to fall asleep to at work. Nice. Doc's asking, did the Shift ID work out? Kinda. Was able to see so I was able to see which schedule, I guess you can call it, that the transmission was pulling from. But I wasn't really able to do anything with the information. So this kind of sucks. But I'm working on some other stuff to try to figure out how I can replicate that situation without going to the drag strip. I just couldn't get it to replicate what it did on the drag strip at the street while I was data logging the Shift ID. Talking about multi-speed transmissions too. You want a 2-speed, I'll get a Power Glide. Yeah, this is a little bit different than a Power Glide. Ardell saying EVs are going to be throwaway cars. It's funny. that you say that. There's some emerging evidence to agree with you on that. In fact, when it gets into battery replacements, when it gets into range deterioration, when it gets to what is the cost of recycling those materials, this is something that I was really concerned with. And I mean, it would be a cottage industry, wouldn't it? I mean, if you're a company that would repurpose or recycle these EV batteries, the problem is that EV batteries are full of a bunch of sketchy, really twitchy chemicals, and you gotta really know what you're doing. You can't just grind them up and smelt them and melt them and make something new out of them. It doesn't quite work like that. It's not as analog as it is with an internal combustion engine. Lots of caustic chemicals in those batteries, not to mention a metal and lithium that is about as twitchy as it gets. Eric Tate saying hello. Tom is not a fan of the EV. Doc's talking about the 2.7 turbo and the Silverado. Yeah, I don't know of anybody else that would call that 4-cylinder awesome. I mean, unless it was paired with a hybrid setup. I mean, I'm sure it runs good and does a lot of great things, but the problem is that on the highway, they all take the same amount of power to run down the highway. And this is something we found out with the fleet trucks, where you have a 6-cylinder that uses the same amount of gas to get down the highway as the 8-cylinder does. Both trucks on the highway get anywhere between 18 and 19 miles per gallon, unless there's a headwind, and then you're into the 6-cylinder more. So, it goes rich a little bit quicker. Anyway, something that we've had a lot of experience with, the fuel economy thing. From what we do with trucks, it ain't there with a 6-cylinder. Sam saying diesel generator tech is the future, not EV. Well, you're going to need them to charge your EV. Craig saying I'm never going to buy another Dodge. Doc saying he agrees with Sam. Doc's talking about the locomotives. Actually, everything marine, any freight carrying contraption uses a diesel generator with electric motors to motivate it. Your mom's asking, do you think they will ever give the Camaro new? No, Camaro's dead in 24, man. What you got now is what you can expect all the way through 24. Or they'll say Montana doesn't have charging stations. Bad winters too. Yeah. So get ready. I mean, that's an area that's never going to see widespread adoption of a technology that when it fails, it puts lives at danger. Let's see. Oh, Eric's talking about Ford keeping the Mustang with the ICE. Yeah, I mean, and you can get it with a manual. So, and that's something else to consider. I mean, like I was saying in the other video that I put together, it's real difficult for me to have any sympathy or brand loyalty for a brand in Dodge that seems to run at the slightest hint of, what do you even call it? Opposition. Like Dodge should have been the one telling Stellantis, no, we have to keep this brand what this brand is, as opposed to losing so much fan confidence. And there's a lot of people echoing that I'm not buying another Dodge sentiment. And it's not just because Dodge is going EV. Well, it is but it's not. See, a lot of people are saying, I'm not going to go Dodge because they only sell EVs, and that doesn't fit my needs. Those vehicles don't fit that individual's needs. It's inconvenient for them. It doesn't work out for them. So since it doesn't work out for them and it doesn't work with what they're looking for, they're going to go somewhere else, namely to Ford. And in this case, Ford's still going to make the Mustang and the newest, latest iteration with the most development, the most technologically advanced internal combustion engine. Again, rumored to make somewhere around 500 horsepower, is going to be the darling of the aftermarket. And you'll be hard pressed to not be amazed by that car. I mean, that thing is going, and you might say, oh, it's only 15 more horsepower. Yeah, but it's not, because the way that that car, I'm assuming, is going to be making power is that it is going to be stronger all over the place. It's going to be marketably quicker. And let's be honest, it is always going to be the darling of the aftermarket. So as soon as that thing hits the dealerships, aftermarket is going to clamor all over it. And once they get through with that thing, it is going to be all over but the crying. And what I mean by that is the funeral of Dodge. Once Dodge goes all EV, it is understood, and Tim Kuniskis brought this up in that interview with that Autoline TV. It is understood that they are going to lose a significant portion of their fan base. And my response to that is, well, if you knew that this was happening, kind of a weird business decision. But secondly, you're alienating. It's not that you're losing, it's that you are driving these people away that don't have convenient places to charge these vehicles, that don't have safe places to charge these vehicles. And again, people keep talking about, well, you're talking about a problem now. Is that really going to be a problem in 2030? Well, in the infrastructure thing always comes up. I'm not worried about the ability to make the electricity for these cars. What I'm worried about is somebody's charging cable getting stolen. What I'm worried about is vandalism. What I'm worried about is everything else that can be bad about plugging your car in if you don't have a secure, safe place to lock it up. I mean, it's a pretty important part in all of this. So, leaving your car vulnerable outside is not a good look. And what are you supposed to go outside in the rain and charge this thing? That's like plugging your freaking toaster in the shower, right? It's kind of scary when you think about it. So regardless of what anybody says, and regardless of what folks want to try to paint this whole situation like, I have real concerns from a convenience, a safety, a range, longevity, environmental, economic. I have all of these questions that are not getting answered by any of these manufacturers. They're conspicuously dodging the real questions that just normal, open-minded people have about these cars. Normal thinking, smart people are asking about these types of vehicles because the technology, although it's not new, it is new to a lot of folks. The concept that, yeah, you're going to have to plug your car in. Yes, your electricity bill is going to go up a lot. Yes, there could be other consequences for this. Again, environmental, economic, you get the idea. So taking all of that and, balling it up and throwing it in a pot, I just find it odd that because these concerns aren't being met, manufacturers seem to think that, well, if we don't answer them, the problem just goes away. And I find it odd that manufacturers would really do those kind of things instead of addressing the realities of the EV. And there's a lot of folks that would find an EV a bit more attractive if the realities of EV ownership were put out there and made a bit more public, and maybe have a little bit of an education of how these things work. What are the concerns? Answer some of the concerns, address some of the concerns, answer some of the questions, and have an open dialogue about what makes one of these things tick, both in the short term and in the long term. I got to tell you guys something. This is something that I've noticed, by the way, of late. Have you guys ever seen, a used EV? Like, have you seen a used EV on a used car lot? Have you seen one with paper plates, in other words? One that you know is older. Let me just give you my experience, okay? This is obviously not the last word in this little experiment here, but for whatever reason, I've got it in my head that whenever I see an EV at a used car lot, I'll duck in just to take a look at it. I'm not there to, video it up. I'm not there to drive it. I'm just there to look at it, to look at the condition of the thing, to see how well it aged. And some of you guys that know or have been around the show for a while, what kicked this all off is that I was meeting some clients for lunch, and there was a Tesla that was obviously a used car that was recently purchased. The interesting thing about this car is that it looked like a busted up old ass Kia or Hyundai or Civic or something like that. You know that when this car was ordered, I doubt it was ever sitting on a showroom floor, but when this thing was hatched, it was somebody's darling, right? It was just, oh my God, I got a Tesla. Oh my God. And then the newness wore off, and then some other creaky, crackly things happen, and then problems start coming up, and well, it doesn't have the range anymore. I don't know the backstory of these things. I'm just making this up. I don't know why the original owners got rid of it, but the fact is that they did. I have yet to see one of those used EV type cars. I've yet to see one look like it was lovingly cared for. Every single one, every one of them that I have seen looks like they were driven by somebody smoking 2 packs a day, that treated the thing like it was their own personal trash can, that basically was this disposable transportation appliance. So that first car that I saw was like a silvery looking colored Tesla model. Who gives a shit? It really did look like that. Like there was you could see cigarette packs in the back of the thing. It was, it looked like somebody lived in the car and survived on like McDonald's and like soup in a can, which is, I mean, I've been there, guy. Ain't nobody judging. But the reality is that it's just a freaking car at that point, with all the failings of a used car. And I tried to think about it, like how much did this person pay originally for this Tesla? The thing wasn't cheap. It wasn't like it might have been a Model S, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I can't tell the difference. That's the other thing. Guys, forgive me. I can't tell the difference one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. They all look like electric razors to me. So I don't know, like if it was an S, if it was a what, if it was a sedan. So I guess that's the S. Where I'm going with this is at some point that was somebody's brand new car, and now it is somebody's bucket ass used car with, boxes of smokes and some wrappers, and, just, it was funny to me. Okay. Just think about it. You're supposed to be all like, I drive a Tesla, and you get this certain image. Like what's the slideshow that goes through your head when I say Tesla owner? Okay. So take that person and take that car and everything that it represents, and now give it the story that I just laid out for you. And it's funny because like literally hamburger box. There's a McDonald's, you can tell it's a hamburger box. Anyway, every one that I've ever seen, the point is, every one of these things that I've ever seen, they don't age well. You can take an old Civic, clean it up, and it'll always be an old Civic. It'll run forever if you even maintain it somewhat responsibly. It will last a long time. These electric vehicles just don't age well. And it's telling how people take care of them. The more I've seen, it's almost like the people that buy the EVs own them just in spite. Like they own this vehicle. And they run the living hell out of these things and then get rid of them because they do start to show signs of things not going so well. I think the latest thing with Teslas and some of these other higher, like real high power EVs, is that they were having a nasty habit of ripping the motors off of their mounts, or at least the mounts cracking. So if you're into EVs, might want to come up with some kind of a support, like a rear diff brace, but for your motor mounts. You get the idea. But anyway, again, the more I see where the EV is going and the more that I see what people treat these cars like, the less encouraged I am to pick one up on the used market. The less safe I feel with the idea of that level of purchase. But more to the point, I don't know how much of the battery is used up. I mean, I don't know how much of the range, I should say, of that battery is used up. I don't know how much of that performance is gone. I don't know about the rest of the car in general, but damn, by the looks of them, they're pretty bad. So anyway, I figured I would share that with you. Let's see. See, Eric's hanging out with Ardell. Alex asking, what valve body should I get with his NAG 1? Man, I couldn't tell you. Dr. Diff would have to answer that question. I know that Southern Hot Rods had one that they did modify. It just depends on what you're doing with the thing. Comp Stage 3 bolt-on car. What intake are you going with? I just, out of curiosity, if you're going with a Stage 3 comp cam, typically that's going to be a fairly aggressive cam, probably not going to work all that great with a stock intake manifold. I mean, it will, but it won't. I mean, it's a 2012, but it's still a NAG 1 car. I would probably, it just depends on what you're doing. It's going to be a little bit of a mismatch. The cam's going to put the power a little bit outside of the range of that intake. And what's going to happen with that is you're going to get a real flat back half of the power curve with that thing. If it's still the same Stage 3 that I remember. And again, OC, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. I touched on what Eric was talking about with the fuels. Michael's saying so talking about Kaniskas in that interview saying it wasn't going to be available in 24. The thing is leading up to this, though, we had a lot of sources quoting 2024 as the year. But realistically, does it matter when it's going to be? I mean, again, we were told that the Challenger was going away in 2018, only to have it extended now, what looks like, the 2024 model year being the last model year. So then what happens after that? And that actually brings up a pretty solid point. With the Challenger going away in 2024, maybe that's where those sources were getting that EV to be released in 24 model year from. They're saying, okay, well, there can't be a gap, could there? I mean, would you have a gap between the Challenger and Charger going away and this new replacement being released? I mean, if we're talking 3, 4, 5 years away, that's a long time. And with all of the buildup with direct connection saying that it's going to be the performance arm of the EV, and that's been nothing new. That information's been out now for a while. Let me ask you this. How would it look if Dodge didn't hit a 2024 date? I mean, obviously the 2024 being the last year of the internal combustion engine, maybe it's a 25 model year, but 25 model years are built in the year prior. Typically, in normal parlance of automotive manufacturing, July is the month. So if you have a vehicle built in July of 2022, typically that vehicle is going to be listed as a 2023, although 2022 model year is a little bit different than that. But I think you see my point. If that's where these sources were getting all of their information and nothing was being recanted and nothing was being reeled back from that, does that mean that we're going to have a period of time where we're not going to have anything? Are we going to have 2025, 2026 as years without a Challenger, years without a Charger, years without a Banshee, if you will? What will take the place of that? Is the Hornet supposed to take that slack up? I don't know. That's pretty tough, but you bring up a really good point. Correct in saying that Kuniskis never said anything about 24, but everything that we had read leading up to that was talking about 24. And as a matter of fact, one source, this is going back, God, it's been a couple of years, so I can't quote off the top of my head, was saying 23 we were going to start seeing EVs. So I can see where you're saying, okay, well, the guy didn't say that. Okay, well, the guy didn't say it, but a whole lot of other sources were. It doesn't mean anything. It's all rumor. But what happens if you're right? What happens if there is that lag, that complete void of a performance car? I mean, can they keep making Challengers and Chargers for an extra couple of years just to get us by? I mean, that would really piss you off if you bought one of these last call cars, because that's kind of the point of last call. It's the last call, not the after party. So anyway, I mean, you bring up a good point by pointing that out. OC saying, honestly, it's just assuming Tim would have said if it was going to be ready in 24. Maybe they did jump the gun. That's completely possible. But the thing is that if it's not going to be ready, what's going to be there? I mean, can you imagine Dodge not having an answer for the Mustang for several years? I mean, they're not going to have an answer for the Mustang, period, right? Because, I mean, they're not going to have an internal combustion engine that we know of. But not having that EV, what does direct connection do in the meantime, by the way? You got to talk about that too, right? I mean, I know that they're trying to figure out a way to get executive orders on all of their supercharged variants and their in-house tuning, but golly, in the meantime, what do you do? Perish the thought, right? Eric's saying Stellantis ruined the Dodge brand. Yeah. Ardell saying, I agree with OC, but they are saying goodbye to the Challenger and Charger. For sure they are. Doc Diff's working on his EV classes. He got the hot gloves and the hot sticks for battery disconnect. Ardell saying, thank you, OC. So what he's talking about, so there's different gloves that you have to have. And one of the types of gloves that you have to have is they are double layered gloves, and it could be latex and rubber or whatever, but you'll have an outer layer, which is one color, and the inner layer, which is another color. And if you tear that outer layer and you see that color underneath it, you have to immediately trash those gloves. And what that is, you work in high voltage, high amperage situations. What'll happen is that little bitty pinhole is just what the electricity needs to find a home. And once it does, it'll vaporize parts of your body. So Yeah, that's so there's all kinds of safety equipment that you have to have just to be able to touch those types of vehicles. You got to remember, you're talking about a power source that has enough amperage to power your house, like in the case of the long range Lightning truck, for what, 2 days, 3 days? That's not insignificant. And you know what happens if you mess around with electricity. So Marco Muay Thai's in. What's up, man? Oh, Sinners are saying I've been a flat rate Dodge tech for 19 years. I have no interest to work on EV shit for flat rate pay. I'll be looking to get out of this field if I'm forced to work on it. I can understand that completely. Sam saying we've gone full circle on alternative fuels. Yeah, Model T would run on pretty much anything flammable. Yeah, there's nothing new, nothing at all new about alternative fuels. Rift is in. What's up, buddy? Eric's hanging out with Doc Diff. Chuck Rice is in. What's up, buddy? Ardell saying the batteries are twitchy, like you say. Yeah, it scares the hell out of me. RT guy saying I have a 2014 Challenger RT 5-speed. Is a full bolt-on setup enough to beat a 6.1? Yeah. Yeah, kind of. It'll be close. And depends on what you mean by FBO. If you're talking about throwing a gear into the mix on that, then yeah, you'll give that 6.1 fits. If not, then it'll be relatively close. But you have to remember, those two engines are a little bit closer in power from the factory. Rich saying, I got to drive a Plaid today, and the driver of the Plaid drove my 900 wheel horse Hellcat. He actually said my car felt slow. Yeah. So one of the things that Kaniskis also said in that interview, and he's right about this, if you drive an EV, it completely changes your perception about what's fast. And that's true. It's very true. Everybody that I've spoken with that is bought, owned, driven, ridden in, however you want to categorize it, everybody, to a man, to a woman that is ridden in one of those cars, driven, etc., has said it is a completely different experience. Now, I haven't driven a Plaid, haven't ridden in a Plaid, but I've seen what they can do against extremely heavy artillery coming from all walks of manufacturers. And yes, they are the top of the food chain when it comes to going fast, at least in that respect. And they are getting more and more powerful every single year. And that's great. But it's just a bit concerning when we start talking about the pricing and everything else that's going to be associated with this thing. Eric saying didn't want to work on any of them. I get it. I tell you what, and this is the other thing that's the scariest thing about the EV is if there is a short in that battery because of a wreck. If you need any convincing of this, look up EV battery burning, EV battery explode. You can look at LiPo battery in the RC world and see what those twitchy ass batteries do. Those things are more volatile than the lithium ion or the lithium ferrous batteries that you see in EVs. But it doesn't remove the fact that when an EV battery does light up, you got to just let the thing burn, because adding water to that can potentially make the fire worse, because all that lithium that loves to react, it is a vigorous exothermodynamic decomposition when it comes into contact with water. Just what they're using to put the thing out. Let's see. Oh, Arfo's saying, just curious about your thoughts. If looking for a little more fun on the street, my 5.7, are shorty headers and a tune worth it, or should I look for cheaper venues first? Man, Rift actually kind of beat me to it. I'll say, just get you a pedal commander, man. Don't worry about trying to get the thing. Yeah, shorty headers, no, don't. Just, I mean, it'll help, but it's not worth it. You're better off going with long tubes and a cat back and a tune to go along with it. See, the thing is the little modifications get you a very small amount of gains. It's almost like a waste of, it's not a waste of money. It's just, there are better ways to spend your money. It's just, it takes more money in the better ways to spend your money. Mom saying car guys will probably buy the electric charger and convert it with gas. You've seen the guy that the LS swapped the Tesla, right? I still think that's hysterical. Rip saying he likes the 85. I do too. It should be easy to make that conversion. I mean, look at Brazil. Everything down there is E90, E85. I mean, or 100% ethanol. Steven saying he's going to lose interest if they do go full EV. I can understand that. Dr. Joe saying 85 for the win. Ardell saying Montana is already behind at least 10 to 20 years from everywhere else. He's from San Francisco, moved there in 87. I was shocked. So what was funny is when I lived in San Francisco, it was interesting to me that, I miss it, but the people, what I miss, the friends that I had and have there are the folks that I miss. But it was interesting to me when I lived in the Bay Area, how many people, like hardcore environmentalist type people, true hippies, how many of them drove old Dodge Darts, Ford Mustangs, Camaros, old pickup trucks. I mean, you'd see San Bruno was littered with them. Millbrae was littered with them. Mountain View, in the city proper. I mean, South San Francisco, you'd see them a lot there. And the reason for that is that, well, the car's already been built. The energy's already been spent. All you got to do is, it's easy to maintain. It's simple. And the thing has enough power to go up and down and get up and down the peninsula. And I mean, there was a lot of that, a lot of old ass Lincolns too, man. Slab-sided Lincolns were littered the place when I was there. I was there for about 4 years. JP saying walking away from a fan base was a gamble, a big one. They're handing the most loyal part of their fan base to the 500 horsepower Mustang. And that's something that scares me because this is, experience is the one thing that you can't teach. Ask anybody that's ever been in a ring, ask anybody that's ever been in any competitive situation. You can teach all you want, but when the bell rings, experience gets you the farthest, provided that it's proper experience. And in this case, Mustang has the proper experience because they were the only flag bearer for so many years. So because Mustang was the only flag bearer for the American muscle car in general, and this is at a point in time where every car was internal combustion, and EVs were just, more or less a novelty at this point. But Mustang has always been there, and Mustang looks to be the only one that will be there, which again brings me to my point about that 2024 EV number, release date, year, I should say. If it's not released then, and it's released in 26 or 27, when the Mustang is well into its full swing of development and, however else that thing is going to evolve over the course of time from 2026 to 2030, it's going to be full in its development at that point. And administration or not, Dodge isn't going to have a car to compete with it for a number of years. And this is the key point. With Dodge, it's kind of funny because Dodge will show up late to the party with something really cool. And if they do that with the Mustang, and let's say that there is a period of time where they're allowed to develop an internal combustion alternative, that may be cool, but we may not see it until extremely late. And again, I just don't know that you can recall a bunch of loyal Dodge fans that haven't and won't get rid of their internal combustion engines. I mean, would you be a player then? I mean, the winds of change are always blowing. And if something changes and Dodge starts making something in that time frame, how would that compete with the EV? That's another question. Like, can both of them live under the same roof? And that's, I guess, really the better question. If Dodge did change gears, could an e-muscle car live under the same roof as, say, an inline six hybrid? Could that work? What would the price points look like? Because see, this is the other scary part of this whole, I don't know, process of discovery when it comes to the EVs from Dodge. How much will they cost? And how are they going to position that vehicle up against the Mustang? Think about that for a minute. Remember when, it wasn't all that long ago, you would have pony cars getting released, and you would see them on the streets at Willow, or you would see them on Laguna Seca, whatever they're calling that now, Thunder Hill, or whatever track they're running at. And they would put the ZL1 up against the Hellcat, or they'd put the GT350 up against the whatever. You see where I'm going with this. How are the journos going to position and posture this latest EV with the Mustang existing and everything else not? Do you roll the thing out on a road course, or is it a drag race only proposition? How are they going to actually take this thing? You know, it's funny. I was watching, and journos right now are not being all that sweet to manufacturers, to say the least. I was watching one today. It was the guys, I think they're Canadian. I'm not really sure. Anyway, it was they put that little Toyota thing, the GR35, whatever the thing is. Can't remember what they call it. You know the one I'm talking about, the little 225, 250 horse thing. They put that up against the new Z car. And it was funny how they were compliment panning the Z car. It was interesting. Basically saying it's an old platform, it hauls ass, but it's really more of a competitor to the Mustang than it is to, say, a Supra. Found that to be a really weird way to position that car. I think they were basing that off of weight or something. But again, it's a stretch to call it a non-competitor, or at least an easier fit to put it up against a Mustang than it is a Supra that is closer in power and weight. You get the idea, right? Well, how are they going to pair this latest Mopar? Is it going to be like, do you pair it up against other EVs? Is that fair? Is this going to be like a muscle car, e-muscle versus the Mustang? I'm just curious, because the bottom line to that show that I was watching, the FRS. So the FRS, I guess that's what it is. They're saying it's a way better car than this 400 horsepower Z car. Basically makes twice the power. I wonder if you're going to hear a lot more of that type of a sentiment. Yeah, it's got a lot of power, but, and then you start listing all of the, like you'll compliment pan it. Like you'll say, yeah, it's got a lot of power. It looks really neat. It has these features. But around our road course, we use 45% of the charge in 20 minutes. You know, you can hear this coming, right? And I mean, it's the journos may end up tearing this thing completely apart. So anyway, just kind of an interesting thing that I noticed and that I thought of while I was watching that show. Catalyst, thank you very much. Somebody pulled up right in front of my door. At what price in PowerPoint would a Banshee interest you over a Hellcat? You know, that's a really good question. I'm not sure that I can pose a sophisticated response to that question because I don't know what the final range is going to be. I don't know what the final performance numbers are going to be. I don't know what direct connection will offer. And probably more to the point, I don't know what to expect. So asking me what kind of price would get me where I needed to be, I would have to say it would have to be a direct line of sight price thing. Hold on just a second. All right, somebody I guess is getting a delivery. We got a delivery, one of the 18 wheeled up over there. All right. But it would be difficult for me to answer that question because there's too many unknowns. And the other side of that is it going to hold together? I mean, this is a legit question. This is a legitimate concern that I have. Is that Banshee, are the quirks going to put it over the edge for me? Is it going to be a little bit too, I don't want to use the word kitschy because that's not the right word for it, but what's the word that you would use for something that you are just, I don't want to use the word turned off by, but like it's you're trying too hard. And I think that the Banshee comes to the table trying too hard. It's like you're dealing with somebody that just wants attention. And I think that that's a great thing on the part of Dodge. And that's something that Kaniskas was really also driving home, was that they want this to be an experience. The muscle car is an experience. It's not a transportation appliance. It is an overwhelming experience for all of your senses. The feel, the look, the sound, everything about that is important. There's not one leg that is more or less important for that experience. And the EV, as he was describing it, and as he was explaining the engineering behind it, was being engineered for that exact purpose, to have a sense of presence, to have a sense of theater, which I've been talking about. I've been using that term now for how long now? God, it's been a couple of years now. With other applications, and primarily also with the EV. So I know exactly what he's driving at. When he uses terms that are that familiar to me, I understand where they're going with this. But it can't be all for naught. It's got to have the chops to back it up. More to the point, it's got to be competitive. It doesn't just need to give you a sense of speed. It has to legit be fast. And if we're talking about direct connection, carrying that platform in terms of modification, where you would have, say, a 400 kilowatt, a 100 kilowatt, a 40 kilowatt upgrade, whatever kind of upgrades you can get for this thing. What exactly would that mean in terms of performance, and where would that particular product, where would that lie with the rest of the field? It's interesting to me. And this is the thing. I don't want you guys to think that I am against EV. And as a matter of fact, if you've been around the show long enough, you'll know that I'm actually real level-headed when it comes to talking about EVs. And I love the performance of it. I love the straight line performance. I love where the technology is going. And I just also have to understand that not everybody is going to be as accepting of the EV stuff. And again, for their own individual reasons. It could be they don't like the environmental impact. They don't like what it does to the countries. They don't like, there's all kinds, the raw materials are coming from. There's all a bunch of reasons. And I get all of them. But I understand why they're doing it. And somebody's heading out to have fun. So sometimes, and I think I know which car that is. That's one of I think that is a Bullet Mustang. This guy's got a gorgeous Bullet Mustang. Talked to him a few times. Anyway, there's a lot of folks out there that can't afford, and the EV prospect is just not convenient for them. So anyway, lost track there. Getting back to you guys. Let's see. Again, Catalyst, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And hopefully that answers the question. I just really don't know. If it performed like my imagination tells me it can perform, I would say it would have to be the same price as a Hellcat. Because I have to trade off too much to get an EV. I have to trade off too much range. But see, I'm getting other things along with that EV. Presumably, I'm not going to hang a rod out the side of an electric motor's block, right? It doesn't work like that. So, right on that, Steven's got, they'll try to sell it as a sophisticated muscle car, smart enough and caring enough to see that it's the proper thing to do. If that is how it's marketed, that is first of all, it's a false narrative. Second of all, it is not in lockstep with how the brand needs to be put out to the public. If that's what they did, I would hope that they wouldn't. But man, that would be a bad look. Doctor, I saw this as I was scrolling back up. It's happening if you mess up, disconnect the battery. Yeah, the problem is that batteries, as stable as they are, do fail. And that's, I think, what a lot of guys are concerned with. But it's true with anything. I mean, an internal combustion engine, you disconnect the battery. Let's see. Let's see. I just saw another one from Dr. Diff. Thoughts on the Victor 2 intake for Rick's Challenger? That ported intake has given us problems. It's the 428 car with a Vortec V7. they're all basically just going to be short ram type of setups. So I would say, though, for a 428, for that level of cubic inches, I wouldn't use a stock intake on that at all. I wouldn't even give it the time of day, because you're not playing to that intake strengths, especially with the cam that thing's running. Kind of answering some of these backwards. Let's see. Where was I just a minute ago? Let's see. Eric's saying Dodge is going to lose millions and millions of their customers. I don't know if they had millions and millions, but they're going to be losing millions and millions of dollars. I know that. Riff saying, I'm sure somebody will find a way to tune the new Mustang. Oh yeah, that won't be a problem at all. That'll be pretty quick. Let's see. I think I just caught back up to where I was. Let's see. JP saying, we don't need the loudest, most loyal core fan base at Disney Star Wars before lighting pallets of cash on fire. That is the truth. Oh my God, there is no saving that franchise for me. They're saying, B Mason, you're right. Thank you. X is in saying, what up, Professor B? What up, man? Arnold saying he has not seen an EV on any auto lot. So look, just keep it in the back of your head and just look around, give it a shot. I think if you find one, you might see the same things that I've seen. Steven's saying he likes my impression of EV owners. Yeah, this is what I've noticed. Doc's laughing too. Michael's saying Arizona is where Teslas go to die. I see paper-plated old Teslas out here all the time. Are they looking as busted up as what I'm seeing down here? Let's see. Chuck saying he was at the Northeast Street Rod Nationals today. Thousands of muscle cars there and not one EV in sight anywhere, not even in the parking lot. Nice. Are the EVs not supposed to age well? The batteries don't last that long without replacement. And that's the thing. I mean, we were told at one point that the batteries were good for like 10 years or something like that. But and that in 10 years, they would only lose, what was it, like 15%, 10% of their range, power capacity, or whatever. The problem that I have with that is that these cars really haven't been out for that long. And the technology of the latest battery isn't 10 years old. So can you really say that? Like, is it like what evidence is there to support that? I'm not sure. Arnold saying, same, I go to many tracks, no Teslas. We've got a few Teslas that run down here at Baytown. Steven's saying, since Kaniskis referred to a hybrid Hornet as EV, any chance he's referring to a hybrid? I came in late. I'm hoping that's what ends up being the case. I'm hoping that there's a car that bridges the gap, but according to the, Auto Line TV interview, it just doesn't look like that's going to be the case, guys, unfortunately. Oh, Eric said, the biggest story is that people say electric cars don't break down. They do break down. They absolutely do. And also, Doc, on the Victor too, the only boosted car with the Vic that I remember, I mean, it ran pretty good, but it's not that far removed from to be honest, it's really not all that far removed from a 6.1 intake, although it does have larger runners. If that were my car, I would 100% be running that intake. I would have a hard time running a stock, even a ported stock intake on a 428, especially one breathing that deep. Let's see. Oh, saying the Holly high rim won't fit under the hood. No, it will not. Eric's saying electric car motors are $8,000 a piece, which is weird if you think about it, because it's just an electric motor. Like there's one moving part to an electric motor aside from the bearings. How are you going to tell me that's $8,000? How many moving parts are there in an internal combustion engine? This is a lot. Anyway, Steven saying he thinks that Stellantis is ashamed of the Dodge muscle, that trying to change their marketing to boring Euro crap. Man, it's not looking good. I'll tell you that. Chuck saying the Dodge buzz is everywhere out there. I've had numerous conversations with this. I hope Stellantis doesn't run Dodge into the ground. Yeah, it depends on who you want to listen to and who you want to believe. Arvo is saying that's a solid point. The blower motor of my Challenger gave out after 2 years. I'd hate to rely on an even bigger one to actually move my car. Well, just remember your starter motor does, but it only has to move for, a couple of seconds. Donna's saying, yeah, I'd be scared to be the first to try a Dodge electric. It's not like you're going to be gambling a $30,000 car, which is very true. Chuck's saying the aftermarket companies like American Muscle blow direct connection away. Well, the problem is that direct connection just doesn't have anything right now. Oh, Mark's saying, hey, Mason just bought HP tuners to bring to a shop so they can tune the RT. Nice. That cat delete long tube headers or something else without a tune. I bet they are. Transfer function will be the first thing they change. Kill cat over 10. Steven's saying, so the EVs will get rid of their own users. Yeah, Dr. Diff, get zapped, that's for sure. Uncle Stinkford's in saying, just coming in, I bet V8s will be regularly available in American cars soon. I actually do not think they are going away. Well, they're not going away for at least a couple of years. We'll see what ends up happening. The Mustang's going to be carrying that into at least 2029. Don saying Dodge will rush this EV for 2024. Watch out. It takes them years to get stuff sorted. It took them 5 years to align the taillights from the factory. God's sake, yeah, that's true. Oh, Ardell's saying, yeah, EVs are fast, but he's a true muscle car guy. And that's something else. That's something that I was saying in the last one. Look, yeah, they're fast. I mean, they have to have a redeeming quality, right? Like if they weren't fast, would you even be interested? Would there even be a reason to be talking about EVs if they didn't have the performance that they do? I'll put it to you like this. It's the same thing that I had said, and I read this somewhere, and it's absolutely true. And unfortunately, I can't remember where I saw it. I'd give them credit if I did. But yeah, would you rather have your hamburger microwaved or grilled? That's the way that it was. It's kind of the way that it was written. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it just hits the nail on the head. I can't imagine, again, and this is just my own personal experience from what I've seen people treat those things like, because there's seemingly no consequence for your actions in an EV. I guess that's really the strongest point here. The problem that I have is that there really is no downside if you beat the hell out of an EV. It's not like you're hurting an engine. It's not like you're beating up a transmission, right? It's not like you're doing all of these things to an engine that can fail for known reasons of failure. it's equivalent to saying, well, what do you mean I can't turn my hair dryer on? Not that I would know anything about that, but what does it mean you can't, I don't know, talk on your phone? It's electric. You know what I mean? It's funny that just the ones that I've seen lead me to believe that people treat them like they would treat an old blender, an old electric razor. It's just anything that would run on electricity. If it croaks, it gets thrown in the dump. And I'm telling you, the look of these cars, I mean, they look like they have been, frankly, they look like they were rentals. Like they look like they were part of somebody's rental fleet that just got the hell beat out of them. So, let's see. Steven's asking, isn't the battery under the passengers? Yeah, it's like integral to the structure of the vehicle, as a matter of fact. Ruth saying, yeah, they just don't have a soul. Yeah, I get that 100%. Chuck saying, I spoke with numerous muscle car owners today at the Hot Rod show, and not one of them showed any interest or love for an EV. Yeah, not surprising there. They don't care if they are faster. Muscle car culture will never die. True that. Plus, here's the thing. You know, Kaniskas was talking about the fact that you have people wanting to modify their cars. Half the people that are out there are modifying their cars or whatever. Yeah, but they modify them because that car is going to be a reflection of who they are. It's going to be a reflection of who they want to be. It's going to be a reflection of a lot of different things that is very personal to that person. And selling what is in essence upgrade kits, what do you even call it? I mean, it's not like you're selling performance packages, right? I mean, it's just freaking software and maybe a battery upgrade. I don't know. They haven't released any of this stuff yet. So we don't really know what all it encompasses, but it just doesn't really, it doesn't feel like a modification. It's like getting an over-the-air update. It's weird. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right yet for me anyway. Oh, Ardell's saying he misses the Bay Area too. Yeah, there are times when I very much miss that part of the world. Oh, Himmy's asking, Scat Pack has about 1.5 degrees negative camber on the rear. Yes, it does. The patch test looks okay, but I'm wondering if reducing negative camber would help track times. Man, I got to tell you, I know of a few guys that have tried to get them to zero. Ford, Dodge sells through direct connection the zero camber knuckles that can help the car plant a little bit better at the drag strip, but it only helps if you're having problems with traction already at the drag strip. On a sticky tire, I don't really ever see much of a difference, and I only run on the DBRs. So it's sticky enough, it conforms enough, and I just don't run into that problem so much at my power level. That being said, yes, in fact, Speedy had actually gotten his car zero camber aligned, and it seemed to work out pretty good for him. So it can help, but it's not like a huge thing. But it's a good little sneaky trick that you can do to help the car hook up just a little bit better. Oh, Steven said he likes the quote, "The winds of change are always blowing." Gets rid of a lot of hubris. That is correct. Yes, indeed does. Ruth saying, isn't that Willie Nelson? Nope. That's something my grandfather told me actually once. And again, Catalyst, thank you very much, man. Let's see. Hang on just a second. South Sovereign saying, hit that like button. Yes, hit the like button. And I just saw Steven saying, just like Dodge, you can save Star Wars, but it'll take a hat in the hand apology and the brand pretending the current thing never happened. Yeah. So let me ask y'all that. I mean, if this whole EV fling doesn't work, do you take them back? I mean, I know it depends on what they're coming out with, but for the hardcore enthusiast, which is kind of the brand that Dodge is, I mean, I know Jeep is too, and Ram is to a certain extent as well, driven by enthusiasts, but that's the Dodge, Ram, Jeep thing. That's, I mean, true enthusiasts drive those brands. So in saying that, what would it take for them to make for you to take them back? And I guess that's a subject for a show here in the next 2 to 3 years, right? I'm catching up with a couple of these guys. I'm coming up on about an hour and a half, so I got to get going here pretty quick. But Eric saying, I will not electric car car has 10,000 horsepower. It's just not the same. I get it. Ardell saying he owned some great Mustangs, loved his GT350, but then fell in love with Dodge. I like it. That's the thing. That GT350, I just desperately wanted to love that car. And it was like it was tailor-made for me, but it just needed a gear. And then they had the other problems. Yeah, anyway. Ripped is liking his Mazda 3. And with that, guys, let me catch up with the last of you guys real quick. Summers, I personally think there's a place for EVs. I just don't think the time is now. Chuck's talking about Modern Red saying, yep, the only thing good about the EV is that they're fast. And that's okay. So to that point, you've got to have some semblance of balance. Have you ever seen one of those charts where, it kind of looks like a spider web, and you see one thing that's really far out and one that's really far in, as far as like you do the concentric circles and you split it up like a pie chart, but you say, okay, well, acceleration is really high, but I'm concerned about range, or, all this other stuff. And the problem with the EV is that it's not a very balanced chart. It's very strong in one direction in terms of acceleration. Weird way to put that, I know, but it's really good at acceleration. But there are things about that car that are not a good fit for everybody. It's not convenient for everybody. And I'm concerned about folks getting stranded in EVs. And that's happening a whole lot lately. Kind of a dirty little secret about EVs that's been going around. So someone's saying, yeah, I know those charts. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, and you find strengths and weaknesses, and you kind of look at the balance and see where you need to grow or contract that particular chart. So, Chuck saying his wealthy buddy asked him why I chose the 69 Charger to drive when we hang out at his ridiculously huge house garage. He had 2 plaids in there. Yeah. And there's reasons for that. I mean, you don't have the problem with an EV is that regardless of how fast it is, there is no sense of theater or occasion about the thing. It's like comparing it to like grease lightning roller coasters. If y'all remember those things where it would accelerate like hell, do the loop, go up, do the loop, come back, and then you're done. But again, I mean, the things are just beaten mercilessly. I just don't know how long they're going to last, but Chuck's out saying, well, time to go catch you on the next one. We'll see you, Chuck. And also, guys, with that, I got to wrap it up because I got to get up early. Guys, appreciate each and every one of y'all. Love each and every one of y'all. Would not do this without you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It means the world to me. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it more than you know. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. We will catch you on the next one. Y'all a great one. Adios.